Welcome to Ask the Security Guy. I am Holly Magnuson, and this is episode number 42, where we talk about things related to security. And this is for our April 2019 episode. And let me get Shawn Corman into the room. There you are. Hi, Shawn. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you, Holly?
Doing all right. Getting ready for a trip and some time away, which I'm looking very forward to.
Well, it's the perfect time of year for it.
It is. And but the topic of today is kind of heavy, especially for those of our viewers who have children. Be it elementary through high school, and even we have to worry about our college kids age children as well, unfortunately. And the topic has to do with some of the apps that are available in our world for our smartphones. And we're going to talk about some of the ones that we need to kind of look out for and watch for. As a reminder, for those of you who are watching, if you have questions about this topic, want to get more information, there'll be show notes, but you can always email us at iso@apu.edu. So with that, Shawn, how do you want to kick this off?
So one of the topic that was has been raised with me recently, and I have unfortunately some very personal experience with, is this idea of our smartphones and their apps and our kids, and how all that works together. As you mentioned, I mean, we're both parents. We both have kids in various age groups. And I remember, as we talked about last month, I remember a time when technology was such that I was the remote for my dad. If he wanted to change the channel, guess who got to get up and go turn the knob on the TV? Today is very different. Today, technology is just a part of our life. It's everywhere. And it's very, very common now for us to see little ones. I've seen kids as young as 3 with smartphones.
Well, they've also become a way to entertain the child. Oh, here's my phone.
And and I've had parents tell me, in just a spirit of transparency, that it's a great babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way for them to distract their kid. Hopefully, using some kind of educational program or some entertaining thing that has value while they take care of their stuff. So this is a little touchy. I don't want to get into any parental advice or anything like that. I want to be careful that we're just approaching this from the security and the risks and threat and best practices approach. So please know that we're not endorsing or condemning any parenting style or parenting choices in this. With that said, so let's talk a little bit about some of the risks that are out there. For kids in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, when they have been given a smartphone or a tablet or something that's constantly connected to the internet, there's a few things that rise up as risks. One is inappropriate content sharing. So kids are still learning, from their parents, from their peers, what's appropriate to say and share and do and not do, and those kinds of things. They're learning societal norms and cultural norms, and they're also learning tenets of of the faith that instruct them of what's right and wrong. So when you add all that to an unfettered audience of the world for content sharing or pictures or videos or little memes or all kinds of things, it becomes a risk platform that parents then really, you thought you had to be vigilant before smartphones, now it's 10 times that. So the onus on parents to monitor what's going on, to know what's going on, to look at that device and constantly check it and know what their kids are doing is through the roof. Another big thing that we're seeing evidence of directly related to this is cyberbullying. Um, there are a number of studies being done that are pointing out that before smartphones and before that type of thing, bullying happened. I mean, bullying has always happened. Now, kids go to school, they may deal with bullying at school, then they come home and it's still on their phone and it's going all night long. So there's never a clean break. There's never a disconnect point for kids who are constantly connected, with these devices, with their friends or with others, because they're always engaged in some way with their peer group, and there's never that disconnect. There's never a safe haven. Um, so we're seeing a lot of studies there that are pointing out that this is becoming a real epidemic uh, and something to be thoughtful about. Um, on to make it worse, you also have predators, and these are they're sexual predators. They're looking for either uh, things of that nature, or there's some financial motivation, or they're trying to case out homes for home theft, or they're looking for leverage or blackmail on somebody. And kids are unwitting gateways into this kind of world because they're generally far more trusting and less jaded than we are. And predators prey on that. They really do. Another risk too that you have to consider too is your kids can unknowingly break laws and accidentally involve state agencies or federal agencies, and all of a sudden, you may have the sheriff showing up at your door because something your kid said or did online. Um, that's something to think about as well. And then also reputational damage. I mean, if your kids are doing something and they post something wildly inappropriate or something else in a public forum without realizing the implications of it, or even really understanding what was right or wrong, that can still cause vast reputational damage in your workplace, in your home, or in your community. So those are all risks to weigh out as we talk about this a little bit. So there's more to this than just the apps. There is a personal aspect to this as well that says, do we want to allow these children who are at various stages of emotional and mental development have access to devices that are this capable? Um, so any thoughts on that, Holly? Am I missing anything?
Oh no, I love the thoughts there. And in fact, it was interesting. My son, who is a sophomore, one of his professors, he first day of class, he said, "You know what? I don't want you using your phones or your computers in class because I'm concerned at what it's doing to us as a society." And and brought out the idea of for this class period, for the basically 3 hours a week, I want you to step away from your devices
Yeah,
and learn how to communicate with each other that way, outside of the devices. And I appreciated that because he's thinking about the whole person, and
yeah,
he's sharing his own concerns, and I think the students respected that. At least my son did.
yeah. Well, and in a classroom setting and in other settings, that's entirely appropriate.
Hmm.
There's no shortage of research out there that is highlighting the potential risks
Yeah.
or even damage that technology is causing to us as a society. And when it comes to our young people and our children, I think that that risk becomes greatly amplified.
Hmm.
So, one of the questions I get frequently is, well, these apps and all this stuff has age verification. Well, age verification is a checkbox on almost every system. They're not checking a birth certificate. They're not checking a driver's license.
No, it's just like when we talked about the websites that you could check out people's information. They had little check boxes that said, "I'm not going to stalk this person." Sure, I can check that box, and I
Yeah,
could be a terrible, horrible person. So yeah, the age verification, it still means this, the child is saying, yes, I'm 13 when they're 8.
Right.
There's no way to know what they're doing.
Well, and another thing is that, there's a lot of scams out there that will disguise underage people as of age,
Hmm.
whatever the legal requirement is, and then they'll wait till they get you hooked in there and then spring it on you. Oh, by the way, I'm 17 or I'm 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that turns into blackmail extortion. And there's a number of very successful scammers out there doing that thing. And they're unwitting young people involved in it.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty awful world out there. I mean, that's not to say there aren't benefits to technology, and there absolutely are. But I think as with any tool, there's a lot of care to be used. Um, you wouldn't just give your 5-year-old a chainsaw to go play with. So the same thing would apply to a piece of technology. Um, so age verification, it's a joke. It is a company's way of meeting a legal requirement. It has nothing to do with actually providing safety for you or your kids. And it just is what it is. So I've heard of a lot of middle schoolers, especially, they talk about, oh well, just create a new email account, and you could set one up for free, and then you sign up for this service and that service and the other service. These kids intuitively know how to anonymize themselves with fake accounts left and right. The problem is a lot of these apps that they're using leak location data. So depending on what they're getting themselves into, they are still offering up information about where they are, or worse, your home, and venues that you probably don't want that information to exist. So that's just something to think about, is a lot of these apps natively share location data. And I guarantee you folks, if you're not reading the terms of use on a app or whatever, or free service, your 10-year-old, your 8-year-old, your 5-year-old is probably not going to do it either. And there's a lot of information in the terms of use for an application, even one that you download onto your phone, that tells you what kinds of data it's accessing and sharing.
Yeah. It just goes back to, spending time talking to your kids and helping them understand. Unfortunately, this can be a bad world.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
And
thankfully, I've had
yeah,
those
and
conversations.
to be fair, I mean, I know my perspective is a little stronger than most because I work in this world.
Hmm.
So I am, very keenly aware of the risks and the threats that are out there, and very specifically, the kinds of predators that are out there. And I've seen it. I've seen the damage this can cause to families and kids firsthand. And I've seen, some horrible things unleashed. And we're seeing evidence now that there are some parents who are just flat out saying now that their kids are not going to have access
Hmm.
to technology at all. Well, in the form of a smartphone or a tablet, until they're 18, 20,
Yeah.
some arbitrary age that they're picking that works for their family. But they're citing the evidence that they're seeing in society, saying things like cyberbullying and suicide rates among teens and middle schoolers, and emotional damage that we're seeing, and emotionally fragile kids. I mean, you can't blame technology for all of it, because obviously there's a societal and parental component to all of these things. But what I'm seeing is a lot of parents looking at it and saying, this is introducing an unnecessary risk into my home and into my family.
Yeah,
Um,
and I was gonna say it would be nice if our phone vendors would provide more options for phones that weren't smartphones. Because it's nice, as a parent, I had always said I would never give my kids phones until they were 16, 17 years old. Well,
yeah,
then when they started becoming involved in different activities where the bus may or may not be there really at the time they say they're going to be there, it became nice to be able for them to call, hey, we're back to the school, or hey, we're 5 minutes from the school, so I could meet them there and not have to sit and wait. So, but yeah, the smartphones and the and the app that I would like you to hear you kind of talk a little bit about some of those apps that look innocent, because I think pretty much everybody knows the dangers of Snapchat and what it can create and the problems it can create. But I think there's some apps out there that you wouldn't at first glance realize what they're all about.
Yeah, switching over to apps, there are a lot of apps out there that look innocent. And it's one of those things that the developers put it together with this idea, hey, this is really cool. Well, as with anything, a tool can be used properly and used for good intent, or it can be misused. So it's not really the tool's fault, because the tool is just a thing. It's the use of it that becomes problematic. So as we talk about some of those tools that can be risky in the hands of our kids because of how they're being used by others already, one is called Bigo Live. It's a live stream, kind of like YouTube, but it's focused on teens, and it lets them broadcast live videos of themselves to all kinds of audiences, anonymous, worldwide, and they're out there. The problem is it already has a lot of mature content, and I'll let our listeners infer what that means out there. And they're talking about their clothing or lack thereof and other things that are absolutely inappropriate for youngsters to be talking about. But they're there. Another one is a game. It's called BitLife. And that you play the game, you go from cradle to grave, and you live out this artificial life as another character. Another one is, and I've had some personal unfortunate experience with this one, is called Discord. And it's essentially it was designed around online gamers. But there's all kinds of forums out there, the old style forums. And there's an app that exists for your phone, and there's a website that has a number of ways to access it that are specifically designed to bypass parental controls. This one has a lot of existing mechanisms to bypass parental controls built in. And some of the content out there will shock you in some of these discussions. There's one called Ola. It's basically a live random video chat. It basically connects random users with each other for live video chat all over the world. And again, it's seeing huge popularity among teens specifically because they think it's fun and cool. There's another one called I Am View, and it's a 3D avatar creator. And you basically create a likeness of yourself, and then you have that likeness talk and type and act as you. Well, you also get to choose the clothing and the body style and everything else for this. And you can imagine where that would go. There's another one out there called Calculator and Percent Sign. This is an interesting one because it's not so much a communication app, but there's a huge number of these. There are apps that function just like normal apps. This one's an actual calculator. But if you access a certain command set and authorize with a fingerprint or a PIN, it opens up a secure vault where you can store pictures and audio files and video files that are encrypted and hidden away on the phone. So you as a parent would open it up and look at this thing. Oh, look, it's a calculator app. Well, if you actually authenticate, you may find other things that you probably don't want to ever see. But it's out there. There's another one called Whisper. Whisper is a secure communications app that was originally designed for privacy-minded and secure individuals, but has been hijacked for use as all kinds of other things. So what's sad about this is a lot of these privacy apps and these secure messaging apps and these secret messaging apps Um, a number of them were developed with the idea for people in countries with different regimes had no way of communicating out from their country what was going on and communicating with the rest of the world. So that was some of the intent behind why these apps were originally designed, or some of them anyway. But again, anything can be taken from its original intent or purpose and misused for something else. So really what it comes back to, and we'll include a number of options in the show notes, is if you're going to have your kid or kids use smartphones or use this kind of technology, as a parent, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you, invade their privacy constantly, because there's so much out there that can be twisted up and used to hurt them without them even knowing what's going on. And they, by default, have a far more trusting view of the world than we do.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part is, like I think you mentioned earlier, we're a little jaded. We have this don't really trust anyone, electronically online type thing, but our kids don't feel that way. And as a parent, having, raised two boys, there are years when I knew nothing and I was the stupidest person on the earth and everybody else knew more than I did. And it's
Yeah.
during those times when they become very vulnerable to predators
Yep.
and to these, arenas because they need somebody who understands them because, mom and dad don't. And it's that rub of being consistent and kind of in their face when you have to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's really easy to look at some of these things and say, "Oh, it couldn't hurt them." But there's an app out there called Hot or Not. Okay, Hot or Not basically is exactly that. You post pictures of yourselves and people vote. Well, it's rampant among teenagers, and it has also been linked to a number of suicides. Now, the app itself, they bear no responsibility because it's just, they can't control the use of the tool. But I mean, there's an example of something that's being used, inappropriately by kids who are smarter than us, right? But they're being misled down a bad path with, technology that's readily accessible. So I strongly encourage the use. If you choose to let your kids use technology, or you're in a situation where it's kind of a necessity. I know a number of families that are in either because of a variety of situations. Technology is a must. It's a godsend for them as parents. AT&T and Verizon and Sprint all used to offer phones that had very limited feature sets. In fact, AT&T used to offer a phone that had location tracking turned on by default just for the parents. And you could open an app on your smartphone and see where that phone was at any given time. But it couldn't text, it could only phone call, and it could only call pre-programmed numbers. So, I mean, it's worth talking to whoever your carrier is and saying, look, I need a secure option for my kid. If you have a situation that requires that, I know there are options out there, but you have to look for them. They're not readily accessible.
Yeah, some good things to think about there. As we start to wind down, as a reminder, if you guys have specific questions for Shawn, please feel free to iso@apu.edu. We'll get back to you as quick as we can. So we've got some very good, very detailed show notes for this episode that you can learn more about what's out there and what you can do to help protect your kids. Because that's part of our role as parents is not only protecting them physically, but this online world that we now have to deal with.
Yeah, well, it's a whole new landscape. We have to protect them physically and virtually now.
So, final thoughts, Shawn?
just be cautious. I absolutely do not encourage social media accounts of any kind for kids. If you're going to let them use technology, make sure that you know exactly what's on it and exactly what they're doing on it and how they're using it.
Yep.
Um, I've had my teenagers argue with me about their right to privacy. I told them they could have that when they moved out.
Yeah. My house, my rules.
Pretty much. If I'm paying for your phone and your food, you got my rules.
Yeah. And, keeping those lines of communication open with your kids,
Yeah.
helping them understand without robbing them of their innocence. I mean, it's a fine line.
It's really difficult
Yeah.
to be able to talk to them about the threats that are out there, without coming across and just either one scaring them or entering into an area where they just don't believe you because it sounds ludicrous.
Right.
And the truth of it is, I mean, the online world is very, very dangerous for kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's several, the human trafficking issues. I mean, there's just so much to think about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is there anything we can give our viewers and listeners that will kind of uplift them, because this is a hard topic. This is tough stuff when we think about our kids and the dangers that our kids are in.
I guess the word of encouragement I would put out there is, there are technologists who realize that it's not just as simple anymore as saying, "Oh, I'm not going to let my kid have technology." There are family situations that just don't work with that idea anymore. I mean, you've got all kinds of things going on in home dynamics now that just weren't as common in the past that are now. And technology has become, in some ways, a parenting help. So in that context, I mean, there are also companies out there that are very invested in helping parents make technology safer for their kids. And we'll include some links in the show notes for different tools that are out there that can help, secure your smart device for your kid or your kids. And so it's not like there's no options out there, but none of them are perfect. And if just bear in mind, if you're allowing your kid to use technology, your responsibility just doubled in what you have to watch out for them.
Yeah, good words, good advice. As a reminder, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel. And also, if you have friends and family members who are parents, share this video with them. And they're able to email us as well if they have questions, and we'll do everything we can to get back to them as quickly as we can.
Absolutely.
So with that, Shawn, we're done for another month. We'll see what kind of exciting things we have for the month of May. Until then, we'll see you later.
All right. See ya.